is Carol May Whittick. Welcome to Her Conversations, Tools for the Awakening Woman. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. This is the optimal state to embody in order to attract our highest desires. Who is the awakening woman? She's a woman who's seeking a greater possibility in her reality and looking for solutions. She knows being awakened is not a lofty ideal but a necessity. If she can transform herself, she can change the world. Her conversations will introduce you to talented women who will speak to your spirituality, sensuality and soul. They share their stories and explain how they are in service to the world. So let their words and these conversations embolden and inspire you. My guest on this week's episode is healer, spiritual counsellor and author Amenti The Awakener. Amenti's life story is a testimony of resilience after experiencing infertility, domestic violence, sexual abuse and mental illness. It shows that a true healer often has to face many life challenges. During our conversation, she speaks about the significance of the current world pandemic. We also touch on timelines, dimensions, and why, despite the apparent fear controlling the majority of the population, we're both excited for the future of humanity. So as always, I begin by asking my guests, HER is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. When do you feel you're most HER?
I feel like I'm in my HER when I'm connecting to source, like when I'm in prayer or when I'm in meditation, because that's where I get my sustenance from. That's when I get my power. Sometimes living this life can be very daunting. We go through challenges. Sometimes we don't even know our own mind at times. So for me, when I feel most like HER is when I'm meditating, when I'm praying, because I'm back in source and I'm supported and I'm sustained and I can rest. So yeah, in prayer.
Beautiful, thank you. And can you just, for as long as you feel, you want to, just talk about your journey in terms of your background and where you, and what brought you and what experiences brought you to be doing the work that you are doing today? What was your calling? What was your pull? What was the twist that put you on the path?
I say, well, that's a very interesting question, and I'd have to start right at the beginning. So for me, some of my first memories of being, so to speak, was I used to see myself inside my mum's belly, but I wasn't as a baby. So I used to dream seeing myself as what I used to see as a spiral of light. And these tall beings, which to me I know now are angels, but to me at the time they just looked like these tall beings of light that was tossing the energy inside of my mum's belly. And I remember that I was watching this happen. I remember that as a child, when I was first born, I didn't cry, first of all, because it was at that moment after my mum had given birth to my body that I then came in. And I was very aware of all of these things. I had very vivid dreams as a child. And one of the first dreams that I would always dream was being underwater and kind of seeing the sun through the water and me kind of not drowning, but falling down into the water. And that represented to me being on earth. It represented making that transition into this physical body. I later found out that it's also connected to Yemaya and Mami Water and helped me to understand more of where my spiritual power came from. But if I could go back, those were my first early memories. And I couldn't really understand them at first, but that's all I really knew. And as a child, I had a very deep connection with the Creator. I knew the Creator before I knew anybody else. I had this very, very intimate connection with the Creator where I've always knew that I had come down from heaven to live a purpose, to be a light, to be, to help people on this path in this earth, to know how to be their true light, know how to be who they are. And how did that pan out for me? Growing up as a child, I could see people's energies. I could hear information downloaded. As soon as I see somebody, I would be able to hear what's going on with them. I would be able to see in colors as well, their energy field. And the only way I could understand this was through my connection with God. And I call God like the voice that you have in your head. I would say, what is that? Or what do I need to know about this person? And information would just come. As a child, I would touch people. My mum always used to say that when I touched people, they would feel peace, they would feel healing. So from a very young age, my way of communicating with the world would be what you call spiritual. But for me, it was just the natural way that I lived. And now I understand that it is living from your higher senses. So that was my nature. My connection with the Creator was so intimate. I would tell God everything that was going on with me, everything that I felt. It was like God was the real world and this was just an experience. And I can remember one time that I was feeling so sad because had watched my aunties arguing with each other and talking about another one of my aunties. And then as soon as that auntie came in, they started all talking about another auntie. And I just felt so sad because I felt like I couldn't see any joy. And I felt like when they talked about each other, I could see the energy flying between them. And I thought if they could see what I see, then they wouldn't be the way that they are. So from a very early age, I had a very observer's perspective on life, and God would help me to understand everything. My great grandmother is one of my main spiritual guides, and she came in when I was 6 years old. I'd never met her before, but I remember sleeping at my nan's house one time with all of my cousins on the floor, and I had a really bad dream. And when I woke up from this dream, all I could see was her picture on the wall, and I was very scared. And I can just remember staring at this picture, and it seemed to me like she'd winked at me. And I looked around and I thought, huh? And then I closed my eyes. And when I closed my eyes, she started to speak to me. And she started to tell me that, I had been chosen in our family to carry on the legacy because I listened to God and because I could see all of these things, and that this was my gift and that she would help me to utilize it. So she became my spirit guide from a very early age. She would teach me things about our family history. She would teach me about different herbs and different rituals and things to do, which for me was interesting because I liked knowledge. I was that child that would always be reading. I'd be that child that would be always in the corner, writing and connecting and always ready to come and tell you all of the things that I learned. So she gave me that spiritual connection, and she was my first spirit guide. As a child, I also had dreams. And one of the main dreams that I had was of me sitting down as an elder, surrounded by children, and I was teaching them how to create energy balls for their own healing. I was surrounded by books, and it was kind of like a scene that had panned out. And in this scene, I could see these fields, and on these fields, there were families who were building building healing centers, and there was pyramids, and there was people planting crops. And I realized that was part of what I was here to do. I was here to help people to learn how to live in harmony with Mother Earth again. I was here to help children to retain their spiritual connection, because that's what really helped me to maintain my power. I also went through sexual abuse when I was younger. So the sexual abuse started at the age of 8 with my stepfather. And I knew in a way that it was going to happen because my grandmother in spirit had told me that part of my mission was to go through things that my mum went through that were hidden. Now, I didn't know exactly what that was, but that's what she told me. And so, the particular time where it actually started, I was 8 years old, and my mum had gone to work, and there was an altercation which happened with my stepfather, and I didn't feel any way to tell my mum what had happened. For me, it just felt like that was what I was meant to do. So when it did happen, I spoke to my mum and I let her know what had happened. I said I'd been touched inappropriately. And I even said to her, which I don't know how that would have worked listening to a child, but I said to her, I know this happened to you.
Wow.
And I said to her, I have to speak up about it. And I remember looking in my mum's face, and she was just so shocked. She looked at me and was like, it was like her whole body became paralyzed. And I could see the fear in her. And I was saying to her, Mum, it's okay. And then my stepfather came and stood like by the door. He didn't come in, but he stood by the door while I was speaking to her. And I remember the look that he gave me. And the look that he gave me was one of respect and admiration, but also at the same time knowing that she wouldn't believe me, knowing that, she wouldn't believe me. So when I spoke to her and I told her, I saw in her basically shut down. And it's in that moment where I learned that humans don't like to hear the truth.
Right.
And so from there, I adopted this personality where I felt like my purpose was to just help people to deal with their own darkness, but also to not necessarily not tell people the truth, but to understand that people found it difficult to deal with their own pain. And so I think that was one of the first lessons where I learned to shut down my power as well, because I realized that my truth wasn't received and that people were afraid of the truth. I saw in my mum how she regressed into this little girl when I expressed that to her. And it set off a chain of events of rejection, abandonment, abuse, that continued till I was 16 years old. I came from a family of women. So all of my gran had 6 children and they were all females. But there was always this thing that I felt within them, that they all felt a bit lost, that they all had relationship problems. They all had a negative side of them, which they would use to make themselves feel better by putting other people down. And I realized that there was a lot of hurt in my family. And I felt as if I was here to bring light to that and to shed truth on that. And so that was my early years. Also, as a child, I was very spiritually connected. I could speak to the trees. I could speak to everything. I'd spent a lot of time staring at the sun as well, because I knew that the sun was the portal in which I came to this planet. I was very aware of my past life experiences. I was very aware of life on other planets. I remember when I was doing an essay at school and they asked us to write about if we thought that there was life on another planet, on other planets. And for me, it was like, of course there is, like, you know what I mean? Like, so I wrote a whole 2-3 page essay about my time on Venus and my time on Mercury. And for me, the mind is the portal to everything, right? So within my mind, I could experience everything. Even though I was going through physical abuse, my mind was able to travel. Even though I felt trapped in certain situations, my mind was always free, you know? So when I did that essay, it was an opportunity for me to explore that part of my mind and share with people what I knew. But what happened was my teacher called me and my mother into school, and basically reprimanded my mother and told me that I had a very vivid imagination, and that kind of imagination would get me in trouble because there is no life on other planets and blah, 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 blah. So that was the second shutdown. The first shutdown was don't speak your truth. The second shutdown was don't trust what you see, and that people will always suppress you. That is, people don't want to see the truth. So that again was one of my early memories. I also used to spend a lot of time with other young people, other children. Even though I had people around my age, I couldn't really connect with them. My mind was very mature. But with young people and children, I felt a connection. So with children, the joyfulness, the playfulness of children, I could connect with. And also children were very much connected to their spirituality. They was very much connected to the elementals and that ability to just envision whatever you want and you know, create what you want and believe you can do whatever you wanted. But I realized a lot of these children were growing up in homes with parents who hadn't dealt with their own trauma, and so were projecting all of these things on them that stopped them from being able to be their light. So I knew from a very early age, part of what my purpose was to help children to remain in their light, and to also help parents to understand how to help children to stay in their light. So yeah, so my gifts or my natural talents, you know, started to develop through my childhood. And as I went through certain experience, I realized that I was going through them in order for I could learn and be there for others who were going through those same things. I was very mature minded. I was called an old soul because my gift is to be connected to the mind of God. So I love knowledge. I just know things. That's my gift. I just know. And so I always look for validation of what I know outside of myself. And that's what developed my deep passion for books. Everywhere in my house, everywhere is books. Everywhere is books. You know, I love books. So that developed my passion for books. As I continued to grow, I went through a lot of things because my mum and my father were both in, you know, domestically violent relationships. I had brothers and sisters. And for me, I just felt like my position was to protect everybody. Now, I feel like that was a direct reflection of the fact that I felt unprotected and also unsupported. But I really felt like the connection that I had with God was so powerful that it's what got me through everything. And so it put me in a position where I can be there for others, even though they were older than me, even though it had seemed that they were meant to be mature. The way that I could access my emotions and my past life memories and my wisdom, I felt like that was what I was here to do. And also, I wasn't very heard by people. I was very much shut down. Because I always had a giving nature, I would always be called upon to be the bigger person. So simple things like Christmases and things like that. I remember my mum asking me what I wanted for Christmas, and I wanted a science set because I loved science. And she spent money buying all these other things. And when it came to buying my science set on Christmas Eve, she was like, oh, I didn't have enough money to buy it. Can I get it for you after Christmas? And I'd always be like, okay, yeah. And it would never happen. Or I wanted a bike, and my mum tried to get everybody their presents, and the day before said to me, oh, I didn't get your bike, but I got your bike, but I want to give it to your sister because obviously she's younger than you. Can you wait till after Christmas? And so that just became this running theme of me constantly being put to the back burner and other people being put before me because I was understanding, because I was compassionate. And that can kind of continued throughout my life. So as much as I was this powerful person who was very honest, very aware, very tapped in, very, very feeling and connected to other people's feelings, I was also very sheltered within my own consciousness. I felt very alone at times as well, and felt like my power lied in spirit, and I was just here to observe life. I had a deep passion for medicine and healing and helping people, because when I used to touch people, I'd get downloads, literal downloads of what was going on in their body. I could touch someone and say, okay, you've got some damage in your kidney, or you've got a problem with your lung. It was just my gift. And so I naturally wanted to investigate that deeper. And so I really wanted to do either forensic science, or I wanted to be a gynecologist. Now, the reason why I wanted to be a gynecologist was because, number one, the sexual abuse that I went through, I felt like there were a lot of people that went through that. And the more I studied it, I realized that Black women in general, gynecology was based on us. We were experimented through slavery, and a lot of the trauma is held in our womb. And I wanted to understand a bit more about that. Also, my mum had fibroids when she was 25, and she had her womb taken out without any treatment. And I remember being a very young teenager, nursing my mum for 6 months. Like, she couldn't walk. She had a cardiac arrest twice. She was on warfarin for deep vein thrombosis. I watched my mum just literally depreciate from somebody who's a nurse, from somebody who's always active, to somebody who is now bedbound. And I couldn't understand, because I knew that the reason why she had these growths in her body is because of all the pain that she suppressed. I knew that. And I would tell her things like that, but she didn't feel like she had a way out. What the doctors told her was it. And so I felt like she'd given away part of her. So that made me decide that I wanted to help other people to understand, that there are alternatives to health. During work experience at school, I went and did forensic science, and I went to a forensic science lab. But the first...
Sounds fascinating. I would have loved that as well as a kid.
It was amazing. It was amazing. And I had a real passion for school, right? I loved school. So I remember being there the first day, and weirdly enough, the case that had been brought in that day was a young woman who was about 23 years old, who had been raped, and she had been her body had been pushed into the Walmer River in Wimbledon. And I remember walking in, I could just smell the smell, I could just smell the smell of flesh rotting. And I remember walking in there and seeing her body, and I just passed out. I was like, no, I don't think this is for me, because I was too emotionally connected. I was thinking about, this is a woman, and they had mutilated her private parts, and I was too involved. So it was like, no, that's not going to work for me. And so I then went to work at a sexual health clinic, Brooks Sexual Health Clinic in Brixton. And I loved it because I was around young people. I wasn't sexually active myself, but other than the abuse that I had, but I wasn't engaging in sex myself. And so it was interesting for me to speak to other young people and to learn more about the social aspects and things like that. And so I thought, okay, I found something that I enjoy here. So what I did was I went to Guy's and St. Thomas's Hospital. My mum was working in Guy's and St. Thomas's at the time. And I decided to just go there at age 15 and go to the gynecology department. And there so happened to be a woman that worked there as the manager. I'll never forget her. Her name was Mel, beautiful Black woman. And I sat down and spoke to her about, what had happened to my mum and my dream and my passion. And she gave me a job there and then at 15 years old. So this was in 1999. She gave me a job as a clinic clerk in the gynecology department. She also took a shine to me because she could hear my story. She could hear how intelligent I was, but she could still feel that I needed nurturing and guidance and somebody who could just see me, you know. So I really appreciated her, because whilst I was there, I was working with women, and these women were like 40, 50, but I just felt so comfortable with them, you know what I mean? I was only 15 going on 16, and I just felt so comfortable. I've always been comfortable around elder women. I appreciate the wisdom that they have, you know. And so I learned so much whilst I was there, about life, about women, about sisterhood, things that I didn't learn from my mother, I learned from these women. And every day I would build these relationships with the women that were coming in to the clinic, and I realized more and more that a lot of the physical pains that they were having were based on emotional trauma and mental trauma. And so I would talk to the gynecologists, the surgeons, and the doctors about my intention and my special connection with wanting to help Black people especially. And so they would invite me to watch certain procedures being done, like colposcopy, where you have like the scraping of the cervix to check for cancer and sexual health and different things like that. I also was part of the female genetics mutations trials that they did in Guy's and St. Thomas's Hospital. So I was really entrenched in that, and I loved it. I stayed there till I was 19. But what happened when I was 17 was I used to get tested quite regularly whilst I was there, because I was just very much about, you know, being well in my body. And I remember that one of my tests came back and said I had polycystic ovaries. And they did some more investigations, and the diagnosis was that I had chronic polycystic ovaries, ovarian syndrome, and that I wouldn't be able to have children. And so as you can imagine, that was a bit of a blow, especially as a 17-year-old, having gone through sexual abuse as well. But when I prayed about it, God showed me that the reason why my eggs were not releasing was because I had suppressed emotions, that all of the things that I had been going through, I had normalized them and suppressed them, and I needed to deal with them. Also, there were things in my diet that needed to change. And I was aware of this because I was a gymnast as a child, a professional gymnast, and I loved my body. I had a deep connection with my body. I could even feel when my body would ovulate. But my mum was somebody that didn't have a deep connection with her body. She was overweight. She used to eat a lot to suppress her emotional pain. And one of the things she used to do was try and force me to eat. And I hated that. So I developed bulimia as a child. And so I realized that a lot of this was compounded emotional suppression because I wasn't able to learn how to speak my truth. I couldn't speak my truth to my mum because she was always in denial of her own self. So I just felt like I didn't have an outlet, and my body was telling me that. My body was telling me that all of these emotions had been suppressed, and that's why I couldn't produce these eggs. Eggs represent life. You know, to produce your eggs is that give and receive, that breath, you know, that in and out breath. And I was not breathing. That's how I looked at it. So being how I am, I knew that this was for a reason. I knew that the reason why this diagnosis had come was because I needed to heal myself. And so I started researching around holistic health and wellness for the body. I started looking at somatic conditions, how pain and trauma manifest within the body. And I started to do healing work on myself. And the main aspect of that was through journaling and writing. I call myself an energy alchemist because I help people to transform stuck energy. And one of the main ways in which I did that for myself was through writing. You know, I would write down my thoughts, write down my feelings, and it would be literally like taking the energy and moving it through my heart and through my hand and out of the pen. And then I was able to observe my thoughts rather than be plagued by them and overwhelmed by them. I could observe them. Then I could transform the energy. Then I could see what I needed to do to change. How could I bring that balance? And within a year, I then became pregnant with my first child, Janae. And it's funny because I feel like it was a personal success, but at the same time, if I hadn't had that diagnosis, I'm not sure that I would have had the baby, had a child so early as well. So it was those two mixed emotions. It was a personal mission, but at the same time, as a mother, I wasn't ready. You know, I wasn't ready for that. So I was thankful that I was able to have children. I then went on to have five children altogether. So I became a living testament of my works. You know, I'm that kind of person. I share from my own experience. Everything I've presented has been from my own consciousness and my own connection to the creator. And sometimes that's landed me in hot water because I can't always validate outside of myself what I see and know inside. And so that's made me question myself. And that's what started me on my journey of learning what I had already knew how to naturally do. So I basically went and trained with the College of Psychic Studies, learning things like angel healing, shamanic healing, tarot and oracle, just because I wanted to create a deeper connection with those parts of myself. And I also wanted to be around like-minded people. When I finished working in Guy's and St. Thomas's Hospital, after having my daughter, a lot of things happened. Whilst I was pregnant, I had no connection with my mum. I had just moved into my flat before I became pregnant, and then issues with my mum and my stepfather ended up with them being moved out of their house and me offering them my space to live in for a weekend while I was away, and coming back to doors being locked and me being kicked out of my own home and made homeless. Then I was pregnant, having to live at my boyfriend's house, and that was a push as well because we weren't ready for that. But I was still able to get the nurturing from his mother, and that's what I needed. I needed an example of a strong Black woman. She was into Rastafarianism as well, and so that's where I got a lot of that culture and that understanding of how it, how it was to be a woman, and that started my journey. I also, because of the abuse, had a difficult connection with my body. I felt like I was disconnected because of the levels of abuse I would go through: mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. There'll be times where I would be really badly beaten. And I don't mean beaten like Caribbean children, we get beat. I mean literally somebody trying to break your spirit because they can see a power within you. And I would have these moments where I'd have out of body experiences where I'd literally see myself going through these experiences, but I was seeing it from my soul's perspective. And what that taught me was that everything in life is from the observer's perspective. Nothing can really harm you or touch you whilst you're in this physical body, and that you'll be pushed to the limits of your pain, but only you can choose to take your life or to give in. Another thing that would happen to me would be that I would see it as a lesson of how to manage pain and how to transcend pain. So I'd see myself as like a sumo warrior. And knowing that a sumo warrior has to learn to disconnect from pain and endure it, I would use any kind of abuse that I was going through as a way of strengthening myself. And what it developed in me was a very powerful resolve as well, a very, very powerful resolve and conviction. But at the same time as well, it's not easy to go through those kind of situations. And without realizing, you develop a personality which becomes somebody that's a people pleaser. You develop a personality which is loving and caring of other people, but not of yourself. And you develop a personality where you kind of become detached from life. Like, I didn't have experiences growing up where I would go out with friends. When friends used to come to my house, my stepdad would tell them I don't live there, even though I'm standing right there. So there was a lot of things that were happening that were creating this personality on top of this soul and the spirit that I was. And that was kind of my journey into, I want to say, unpacking our human experiences, which is what we're here to do. Before, I had a pure consciousness of being spirit and just being here to experience life. But this is when things started to get real. I started to question my mental health as well, because I felt like I was dealing with a lot, but I was just dealing with it. I was okay with it. And that for me was like, okay, now I need to check this out. But I would find that whenever I would go to, counseling and things like that, the counselors would be so in awe at how I could articulate my story and how I could, demonstrate everything that I was going through, that they weren't really able to help me. They weren't really able to take me deeper than where I was. And I realized that it was through my spirituality, through my connection with the creator, that I was able to do that. And I realized that I was here to help other people to do the same. So I trained as a youth worker, and I also trained as a counsellor. And I also trained during that time as a health improvement project worker. So I would work in the youth work because I wanted to help young people who were like me and who were going through similar things as me to have a voice, to be supported and to be heard. I also got into the health improvement work because I was passionate about about health. And I also was in a society where a lot of people around me were promiscuous, and there were a lot of people that were on drugs. So I used to go to Steel Band in West London, and just even around our Steel Band area, you'd see a lot of people who were on drugs, a lot of elders. And so I wanted to get into understanding why that was happening and helping people. And I just had a natural passion for working, in the community. So I did that for about 5 years, and just used my helping skills, cultivated my helping skills there, whilst also going through my own soul healing and my own therapy and my own inner work. That then led me on to working with drugs users, and women who were sex workers. I would go into the hostels and go out in the evening with my colleagues, and we would give out condoms, we would give out health advice, we would operate a needle exchange for people who are on heroin and things like that, where they can come and get clean needles and things like that. And one of the things that really struck me in that job is just how much people just wanted to be listened to. I realized that people go through things in life and they become very traumatized by it, but they don't always get the help that they need. And we can all be quick to judge. And when people find themselves in those positions, I realize it's not because they want to be there, it's because that's where their life has led them. And so I realized that I really had a passion for helping people to find their light, to find their purpose for living. And also because of the things that I went through, I had an understanding of trauma and how it affects people. And I wanted to help people to transform that into their power, not so that they will be empowered by their negativity, but so that they can find the light in their experiences. Because God had shown me that everything I was going through was for a purpose. I felt like people needed to know that if they knew what I knew, then they wouldn't be so badly affected and impacted by everything. So from there, obviously with my children and things like that, I ended up with a friend who had bipolar. And this was when I was about 20. The thing is, when she had this bipolar, I could see everything that she was seeing. And that was my first entry into me being able to see other people's spiritual realities. She would have moments where she would be talking to God and she'd be in anguish and she'd be begging God for forgiveness. And I'd be saying to her, look, he's there. Like, I could see it. Like, just ask for the forgiveness. And I realized how when people are in mental health or experience mental health imbalances, how it can affect their whole reality and how they're actually existing within a different level of consciousness, a different reality altogether. And so she was really deeply into it, and she was pregnant at the time as well. And I just felt this natural call. I think it was a soul call. Like, we'd made a soul agreement before this life for me to help her and for her to help me through this learning. And so she asked me for help and to help her look after her child. And I was just like, yo, I'm here for that, And so I took that journey with her of helping to support her through her bipolar, and also just understanding the nature of mental illness and spiritual awakening. And that if there isn't that understanding and that support, then it can actually traumatically affect the person. Most of the things that we're going through are life lessons, and the big challenges that we go through in life are helping us to become what it is that we're here to be. But because we don't have that understanding, and because we don't have that guidance, and there's so much stigma around mental health and things like that, there were so many of our people that were getting trapped, that were getting pushed to the wayside. And so I realized very early that this was something as well that I was here to do, to shed that light, because I could see her experience. I was able to communicate to the doctors and things that were going on for her, and just see spiritually what was happening. That was a very challenging time, which changed a lot of things for me as well. But I learned so much, and yeah, I learned a lot. And so from there, I went into my own journey. I got into a relationship with the father of my next children. So the first child I had was with my best friend, but I knew I didn't want to be in a relationship with him. I was just with him because he was helping support me at the time when my parents were kicking me out, moving into my flat and things like that. And so I needed that support, and so he was my best friend, and so we naturally had a relationship with him. And I remember being so I don't want to say naive, but so innocent that I was so thankful for the help that he gave me. I was like, what can I do for you? Like, and he was like, oh, well, I'd love to have a baby one day. And I was like, okay. It was literally that simple, because for me, I hadn't had people really be there for me like that in my life. So I really appreciated it. But we ended up having issues around domestic violence as well, because we were young and trying to figure it out. And I also didn't know how to articulate my true feelings. I was a people pleaser, and I was always just trying to pacify every situation. I couldn't get in touch with who I really was. And so that caused problems in our relationship. The second relationship that I got into was also very challenging for me. There was a lot of sexual abuse, a lot of physical abuse, a lot of mental abuse, a lot of the things from my childhood manifested in that relationship. But the relationship was a soul contract. This person who I was having the relationship with, I knew on a soul level, I'd already been shown that there was great lessons that we had to learn. That didn't make it any easier, but that was the nature of that interaction. And I learned a lot and went through a lot of healing, and it came to a point where I was going through so much abuse and taking on so much that I just started to feel disconnected with who I was. And so I started learning how to do massage, because I wanted to get connected with my body. And then from then I learned massage, acupuncture, acupressure, a whole load of holistic body therapies, which I then became qualified in, and then trained as a teacher to teach them. I also qualified myself as a music teacher because I love music. And so trained with the Rock School to develop music for healing, music for health and well-being. I also play a lot of instruments, including the steel drums. And so I wrote courses for steel drums and how people can use the power of steel drums for healing, because it's a vibratory instrument. And so that's when I started to really get into the healing work on a deeper level. I was a stay-at-home mum with my children. And so I utilized the healing work to support me and my family. I operated my first business doing holistic health and wellness. I would operate as a mobile therapist. So I'd go around all of London doing holistic therapies. And at first you'd find most people would just want massages, because I was dealing with high class clients. But what they really appreciated from me was that once as much as they got the massage, they also get a diagnosis of what was going on in their body. They would get this spiritual energy. And I started to feel like, okay, there is a space for me. The world needs more of this. Where I was feeling hidden, I realized that there was now a space. But I also struggled with parenthood, motherhood as well, because of the dysfunctions in my relationship, and also just getting used to being a mother. I hadn't mothered myself. I hadn't really got to understand who I was, and I was already now having children. So I didn't have that easy transition into motherhood where you're just naturally like, oh, my children, I love them. I was still very much disconnected. I just saw them as, okay, I've had these children and I'm here to raise them until I can then raise myself. It was just a very weird situation. And it can happen, especially when people see you as a maternal person and they see you as an old soul. And most children that have been in situations where they've had parents that have been abusive or things like that, they genuinely adapt and adopt these very mature qualities, but they inside haven't necessarily had the experience of growing into their maturity. And so that was something that I still needed to do. Whilst I was with my children as well, I went and studied. So I studied quite a lot. I studied for my degree in community sector management at London Met, which included psychology and sociology. I also trained to be a regression therapist and a hypnotherapist with the Regression Therapy Academy, because I really wanted to understand the mind and also understand how to shift the mind, because for me, I always wanted to keep my mind balanced, and sometimes my mind wasn't working for me, I felt. So I learned these skills, and because I love to learn, I just started to learn more and more and more. And my intention was to now take what I learned and help other people. So I started up a community project called Inspired Interactions in 2008, when I had my fourth child. And this was about creating a space where people can come together and share their knowledge, skills, and experiences. It was for people who are socially isolated, and also women who had just had children, men who had their children, families who didn't spend much time together. And I would use my own money every last Sunday of the month. I hire a community center, and we'll do things like African yoga. would do things like healing. I'd start teaching some of the healing things that I was learning. We'd have a sacred space where adults could just talk, parents could just talk. And one of the things that we always would do would be to have a meal. So we'd cook a meal together and all of us would sit and eat this meal together, because I realized that not a lot of us had space to eat meals together. So that really helped me to nurture my passion for community, and just my love for working with people. And when I saw how that was growing, I then wanted to bring my healing into it. So I set up a community-based healing practice called Inspired Therapies, which was at the Tabernacle in Powis Square in West London. And what I did there was offer low cost and discounted holistic therapies, especially for people of our community. So everything from counselling to wellness coaching and dietary needs to Reiki and massage. I really just wanted to help people. But I realized more and more that people weren't ready for it. Also, I hadn't really understood the model of business. I just wanted to help people. And so I couldn't sustain it because I wasn't in a space where I was making the money that I needed to make. And that was always my conflict. How do I make the money that I need to live and survive while still really helping my people and my community? So it was back to the drawing board. It was back to the drawing board. And I just spent a lot of time just sharing my gifts with people. I went and studied at the School of Social Entrepreneurs because I wanted to develop my healing spaces. So remember, I had that vision at 4 that I would be helping people to learn how to heal. And so I knew that was part of what I wanted to do. So I wanted to have a healing space here, like a shop or a facility where people can come and get access to healing, where people can be listened to, they can be taught how to make natural products. And I also wanted to do that in Africa as well, because I knew that was part of what I was meant to do. So I went to the School of Social Entrepreneurs to basically learn and hone my talents. I also started to learn other skills with other spiritual teachers and healers. And then I started to get called to Egypt. Egypt was somewhere that I knew was part of where I've been in my past life. God had shown me that my soul was the soul that was used to create the first egg that basically created all of life. And so Egypt was somewhere where I always felt connected to. And I was guided to go there in 2012 after training with a guy called Stuart Pearce in sound healing. I was guided to go there. And at the time I wanted to go with the group, I wasn't able to go. I was not in the financial position to go. And that really crushed me. But what I didn't realize was that Spirit was setting its own path for me. And the same guide who had led them had contacted me and said, look, I don't know why, but the ancestors are asking me to call you, and you will be coming to Egypt and you will be bringing people here. And at the time I literally was pregnant with my fourth baby. I was like, fifth baby, fourth baby. I don't see how that's going to happen. And within the next 6 months I was there, and the things that happened to me there, the initiations that took place there, like changed my whole life. Things that I felt were just my imagination, like manifested. There was certain things that happened in tombs that I went to. You know, the way that certain people greeted me on the land was like I was an ancestor that had came back. And so that really opened up a lot of things for me, even to a point where it became overwhelming, to be fair. I was starting to receiving all of this stuff about planetary ascension, the birth of humanity, the different, oh my God, it was a lot. And at one point it just felt so overwhelming. I felt like I couldn't relate to the people in my reality anymore because I was receiving so much. And to be honest, it's a lot of the stuff that's happening now and a lot of the stuff that is to come, but I just felt like I couldn't really relate it to the people around me. So I just spent a lot of time writing and channeling and journaling and things like that. And then I feel like my journey has just led me to where I am now. Well, actually, before that, I feel like Facebook and social media became a way of me connecting with people, especially Black people, and showing them our power. Like, I was fed up of going to all of these spiritual groups and spiritual classes. I mean, I even had people contact me and enroll me on courses that I knew nothing about. These courses were like sometimes £6,000 and £7,000, and I would just get a letter saying, "Oh, you've been accepted." And I'm like, how? You know? And I'd go to these events and they would be speaking to different channelers, and I would realize that they already knew who I was. They already were guided to my energy, and this was part of my training and my development as a being. to go through these schools and to gain all of this knowledge. But I never saw any of our people there. Never. Even one of my teachers, I ended up becoming his personal, I don't want to say guru, but he would ask me like really pertinent questions about things that I should not know about. Like my guidance to him became valuable. He saw something really powerful in me, but I couldn't see any of our people here. I could only see, people that didn't look like me. And so I've made it my mission to now try and make these things not normal in our society, but make it more commonplace. I wasn't really too connected to, our traditional spiritual systems that we developed during the diaspora, such as things like OBR and all those things. I wasn't really aware of that. Even with my great grandmother, she would show me rituals and things like that, but she never dealt with it in that way. And even in my family, I knew, because my great grandmother raised my mother and her sisters, she would always talk about my grandmother reading the Maccabees Bible to her, and how, my gran would always be in different churches. She'd go to the Hindu church and praise, and she'd go to the Indian, the Catholic church, and she was a healer. So I know about that stuff, but I didn't really know about the deep, science and why our people were so afraid. And so I started to use Facebook as a way of just connecting with people, doing live readings and sharing with people. And then that led me on a journey where spirit guided me to one of my spiritual teachers called Ras Campbell. He was from Jamaica, and he was into, I want to say, African traditional spiritual practice. He was also into Rastafarian traditional spiritual practice, which most people don't understand that, but it's to do with Solomon's magic and Solomon ritual, Abrahamic magic and ritual. And through connecting with him, I learned a lot, but I also knew the power of my spirit, and I also learned why I was learning it and why I hadn't been guided to it before. It had led our people astray because they had not seen the value of the power within themselves, and it had become a tool of abusing each other rather than understanding who he was, so that power can be used to amplify our energy and support us. So I started to go into the history of understanding things like OBR and Kotomble and Ifa and all of these things. But I realized that my purpose for being on that path and that journey was to raise it to its highest vibration, because I knew that a lot of the things that people were even using it for, if they understood their purpose in life, if they understood what this life is about, they wouldn't waste their time, using their energy like that, trying to get back a man who doesn't want to be with you. Why would you want to be with someone who doesn't want to be with you anyway? And if you understand that everything is always working for you, and you understand that every relationship is teaching you something about yourself, what is it that you need to learn there? Like, my connection with spirit was very much self-development, self-connection. It didn't have all of these other facets. Even my connection with Ifa, which I'm initiated, but I am initiated by source. So that means through bloodline, and I'm an Ayami, which is a ancestral mother who cannot be initiated by, Ifa priests. This is in my bloodline. And how it came to me, I was singing on a stage, and I was singing with a group called African Revolution. And as I was singing, I just heard this song in my ears, and I was hearing Yemaya, Yemaya, and I didn't even know who it was or whatever. And I remember coming off the stage and saying to Baba, who was our elder, I said to him, "What's Yemaya? What's Yemaya?" And he just looked at me, and he goes, "Where did you hear that?" And I said, "I heard it whilst I was singing." And he said, "You are a child of the sea. You are a daughter of Mami Wata." And that's when that flash came into my mind of the dreams that I used to have. And I have had 4 experiences of drowning, 2 in the sea and 2 in the swimming pool. And I was understanding more of my connection to Yemaya, Mami Wata, and also our ancient history in Lemuria, okay, which predates Atlantis, and is basically at the time when we were the feminine energy on this planet. When we had those Amazonian women, we had the maternal women, we had the feminine energy on the planet. So it was really connecting me back to all of that. But it wasn't through the Ifa or the Orisha. So the stories were very pure. The connections were very pure. The initiations were very pure. And so that was my introduction. And I realized that, part of my gift was to help people to develop the natural connection with source, the natural connection with the creator. You know, I spent a lot of time in spirit working with the Orishas, working with different ancestors, working with galactic beings through my meditation, bringing forth knowledge and information that helps us to understand who it is that we are as humans having a spiritual experience. And not only that, what's taking place on the earth, what the earth's purpose is, you know, all of these things. So whilst I felt like other people in my circle weren't ready to understand it, I was developing, I was having this deep connection with source. A lot of the things that took place in Egypt as well prompted me to write a book called Journey Through the Gateways, which was my experience through that. That book I haven't released yet because there was so much that took place that I didn't know how to articulate it. I didn't think anybody would really be ready for the book. but it's a book that's written. And I also, in one of the tombs, I was in a tomb called the Tomb of High Priest I, and he's the one that initiates Akhenaton. He's the one that initiated and worked with Queen Tai. He was the one that was responsible for helping to initiate the kings and queens into their sacred power. And his tomb is seen as one of the most sacred tombs. Now, when I got to the tomb, they told us that the tomb was closed because they couldn't find the key, and they hadn't found the key for 2 weeks. So I was getting ready to leave, and this elder came to us and he motioned for me to come to him. And when we looked at him, he had this blue ring around his eyes, and he looked into my face, and then he walked back, and he walked off, came back and handed me a key. And this key was the key to the tomb of I, the high priest, who initiates all, you know, reincarnated kings and queens. And so they gave me the key, and I was kind of like, wow, okay, what's happening here? And I basically had to open the tomb and descend into the tomb. And I have a video of it, which I can happily share with you. But it was an amazing experience. They knew who I was. They knew that I was a soul that had returned. I wasn't fully conscious of that yet. And whilst I was in this tomb, the lights just went out. And whilst all the lights went out, I was in pitch black, and I sat on the floor, and I started to meditate. I started to feel the spiritual ancestors around us. Even at one point, the high priest I actually came into my body and was moving my body, and I just felt this download of information, and I started to learn these healing gifts. And I downloaded a whole system whilst I was in there called Rama Ati Sekem, which is similar to Reiki, but it's like a whole different system. In ancient Kemet, that's where energy healing first originated. And it wasn't just about trying to help other people. It was about how to harness the power of energy, to move things with your mind, how to levitate things. You know, it was more than just trying to heal people. And it all required a process of self-mastery and self-healing, going through yourself at all of the different levels and bringing yourself to a space of self-enlightenment. So I wrote that course. and same thing, it's yet to still be fully rebirthed. I've already trained over 50 people in it, but at the same time, it is quite advanced healing. It's got stuff to do with DNA and really helping you to go back into the different parts of your soul journey and, you know, learn different lessons. It really is an in-depth program, but this is just showing you how I receive a lot of my information. It comes from source. But one of my main sticking points was because of the things that I went through in childhood, and constantly being shut down, and, you know, people, you know, I even had my auntie shut my mouth in the door one time because she just didn't want to hear what I was saying. I went through a lot of abuse. So I then started to develop this disbelief in myself.
Yeah.
And so my biggest wound, so to speak, or my biggest weakness in life is just not fully believing in myself, or feeling like other people won't believe. Whereas now that is shifting. I'm really transforming that energy now as well, because I realize that there is no validation outside myself, and there is no one that can tell me that I haven't been through these experiences. And I've written every single thing down, but it's not about that. It's about you knowing yourself, and you knowing what you've come here to do, and you being okay with that. So that's I'm mastering that next level as well, so that I can really get to the place of being a fully clear conduit. Because whether we like it or not, our life experiences do, you know, they not alter the lens, but they provide a lens of experience for us on top of the soul, you know, that knows all things and that is pure. And so we're constantly working through the image of the lens, the image of who we are, and bringing that into alignment with the truth of who we are, our soul. So my spiritual journey, and how I got to this point has been my life. Sometimes it's difficult for me to really express and articulate who I am, how I work, because there is so much. I combine all of the different tools that I have to create a unique experience for people that helps them to, you know, alchemize their trauma, understand who they are, understand that their life has a purpose and meaning, and that everything was written and divinely designed. Help you to understand that, help you to access that plan so you know who you are, and also for you to live that. You know, I'm here to help awaken people to their own divinity, and I really feel like I'm here to help people to establish their connection with the source directly, because yes, we have got lots of systems, and we've got lots of gods and lots of different ways of, you know, connecting with the source, but we can get confused. I believe that my job is to help people to have that direct connection, because that's what I have, and that's what I've always known. Part of my journey is also, as I said in the beginning, to help reawaken Black women to their spiritual power, to help them to heal through their trauma so that they can step into their purpose, because I believe that that's integral for the next stage that we're going into. The woman is the nucleus, and the story that we've been through on a mass level in terms of patriarchy, matriarchy, the Black woman herself is the beginning and the end. But at the same time, she's lost that understanding of who it is that she is, and she's lost her power. And so I know that part of my mission here is to be an embodiment of that energy and to help other women to shine that light on themselves, because I believe that once we're in our matrix, like the matrix is the matriarch, right? The elder wisdom of the women, like we are that, but we have lost our way, and it's about reawakening that, but it's also about creating space for our healing as well, because we are the ones that are going to nurture the future. So that's where I feel like my path is leading me, and also working with children, because I've really noticed a lot more, especially of late, a lot of our young people are suffering from mental health and traumatic conditions, and we can't wait until they reach our age before they have to go to counselling and get the tools that they need to deal with things that their parents have gone through or that they've had to go through. My job is to help them have the tools now. So yeah, that is a bit of my healing journey. It's quite a long journey, but yeah, I felt like I just need to express it, because it is me. It's not a profession, it's who I am. You know, and that's what qualifies me for what I do.
And you know, it's like a testimony. When you were speaking, it was like there's so many like parallels with experiences that you've had in your life, where I was just like, yeah, I went through that, you know. but then also having the same outlook on it, because it could have quite easily, you know, there's like anyone who really, really knows me, like really, really knows what has gone on, you know, will be like, you've been through a lot, you know, but like you, I've got that same outlook on it. It's like almost like kind of give it to me, like shake me. It's like an initiation. It's like a resilient. And in particular, there's one person who was being like particularly abusive to me that I had to cut away from. Right. And one of the things that they said to me was, and they didn't even mean it as a compliment. They were like, "Man, you're resilient." It's like, you know, they just couldn't find a way. Whatever they were throwing, it wasn't coming. And it was like, well, yeah, you know. So in all of the different things that you've said, like there's areas of abuse, there's areas of shutting down as well. I really, really hear that. really, really hear that. And also, you know, experiences with mental illness. And as my experience of mental illness was living with my mum, who was diagnosed with bipolar. Right. But you know how over the years they change what they call it. Definitely. But one of my thoughts was always that because she was a deeply spiritual woman, she came from the church, was like, because even times in her mania, she would talk about things that you'd be like, it might sound crazy, but it's not crazy as in crazy. It's crazy as in she's seeing things and people don't know how to interpret it better. Exactly. You know, and the way that they deal with things like that in this world is just give you a bag of pills and suppress you and push you down. And also the whole thing about seeing the matriarchal level of women as sisters talking about each other, constantly doing each other down. And it was just, you know, you're looking at it going, why? Because they all just seemed so unhappy. Exactly. Individually and with each other, and jealous of each other, and scared of each other, and
exactly. But then still mirroring each other's pain and trauma as well. not realizing that in each other is the solution. That was the thing for me, you know. Sorry.
No, it's fine. But you know, one of the reasons that I like you dropped into my mind the other day, and I was like, I need to speak to her, and I need to get I need to get her on the podcast, and I need to get it out like ASAP. It's because of what's happening right now. And yeah, we can, you know, there's so many different threads of story that's going on, right? And you know, there has been an element of the virus, there has been this other thing, but also in my heart, and it's, you know, you as a spiritual woman will know this, is that there's a period of time where we're going to wake up, and I truly believe that this is what's happening right now.
Definitely.
That people are waking. I mean, you can see it, like, you know, some people are getting the truth sooner than later, and it's like, if you're walking down, for me, the experiences, if I go around in the world, especially if I'm seeing people kind of like masked up and gloved up, is I feel like I'm walking into a completely different reality.
Exactly.
I'm just like, I know we're like all human and stuff, but I'm not seeing what you're seeing. I'm not feeling what you're feeling, because I've got a level of hope and excitement about something that's coming online, like now, if you choose to see it. And you're trying to like literally go around and just kind of really like wake people up, because it's like, if you go down the fear road, we might have to, you know, we have part, and we don't even know what the part was going to look like, but it's like, I can't go down that fear road with me, because it doesn't make any sense. And you know, with all this kind of time off that we've had, meditating like a mofo, man. So I'm completely connected all the time. Anytime it feels like it's going a bit stupid, I'm like, I need to just sit down for a good and connect. And in that connection, it's just like getting more and more openings and more awakening and more connection to source.
Exactly.
In that, you know, like you're talking about new worlds and new experiences, and understanding what it is that we are capable of as having a human experience, but also bringing that spiritual gift and the spiritual things that we can do while we're experiencing it on earth. And it's just like there's an opportunity for us to have like a really amazing experience while the experience is here.
Exactly.
Or we can go in the darkness and follow that one. It's like, what are your thoughts on that as well? Because I'm like, I woke up, I'm like, I need to speak to her. She needs to
Oh my goodness. Well, one of the things that I've been saying is everything is mental. Okay, so when you talk about the fact that some people are in fear and some people are, you know, understanding that there's a new awakening, a new opportunity taking place, it all depends on what people are allowed to enter into their minds. And we are in the time of awakening. This isn't just some, you know, new age fantasy. Everything so on a downward cycle, you are learning about things, and when you are on an upward cycle, you are expressing an experience, even though you're always experiencing, whether you're going on a down or an upward. But it's about growth, it's about expansion, it's about progression, it's about awakening, right? And so this planet goes through a process of dissension and ascension. When we talk about the fall of humanity, we talk about the dissension, the last dissension that we have. When we look at our ancient ancestors, we see that they were able to do a lot more things than we were able to do, meaning that they were vibrating at a much higher frequency and a higher level of consciousness than we are right now. And so in order to learn, we decrease in consciousness. And then in order to expand and utilize that learning, we awaken and ascend. So it's always been written that there would be a time, they talk about the ending of the Mayan calendar. They talked about 2012 and, you know, the apocalypse. They talked about it in the Bible, where it talks about the end of days in Revelation. So there was always going to be a so-called ending. What we understand from nature is that there are no endings, there are only beginnings. And, you know, it's almost as if one cycle starts and another cycle ends, but it doesn't end. It's a pathway into a new experience. It's called a transition, right? So we're currently at a stage where we're moving out of a downward experience into an upward experience. And that's not just happening in terms of our reality, it's also happening in the universe. Everything in the universe shifts into another dimension of experience, meaning it gets to experience, everything within that gets to experience itself from a different level. So what does that mean for us? It means that we are going through an expansion. We're going through a shattering of old ways, old programs, old belief systems, and an introduction into a new way of being, right? Time is the first thing that threw us out of loop, because if you look at time really is relative. Time is not real. It's only used to quantify time, experience, right? And we were told that in 2012, the world was going to end. This was going to be the end of the Mayan calendar. And so many people were waiting for that to happen and waiting for it to happen. And in terms, nothing really happened. However, the original calendar that all of these predictions were governed by is what's called the sidereal calendar. It's the original calendar that charts the planets and the stars, the movements of the moon. Whereas the calendar that we operate under is called the Gregorian calendar, which was brought in to coincide with the Greenwich Mean Time, and to put a basic time, a false time matrix on our understanding of time. So basically, we are actually in 2012 now. So if you look at the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition or faith, they still deal with the sidereal calendar, the original calendar. And in their calendar, we are in 2012, as much as the world is in 2020. So you see that time is really irrelevant, because everything always aligns at the same time, regardless. And 2020 means clear vision. It means to see clearly. The 2012 is the end of one cycle and a beginning of a new one. So that's important to note. Also, there is a theme that runs throughout each experience. So each time we shift into a new octave of experience, it is defined by a certain theme. So the last theme that we was in was called the Age of Pisces, and that began with Christ. And I'm going to show you something quite interesting, right? So anything that came before Christ was called BC, before Christ, right? And Christ represented our introduction into a new school of thought, which was around belief, which was around separation from the source, being fallen and disconnected and looking for our connection to the source. It was all about our connections outside of ourselves. It was about believing what was outside of yourself more than what's inside of yourself. And we saw that in science. We saw that in how our world was. Everything was based on the 3D and based on the external. Now, moving in and also patriarchal rule and separation. So if you see, there was a lot of war, there's a lot of fights and vying for power and control that took place. It's also a lot of emotional charged energy, because Pisces is a water sign, right? But we can see that the sign of Pisces, the two fish, is the same sign that represented Jesus Christ. So it shows you that that story coming in was the beginning of a certain level of experience, a certain theme of experience that was going to govern that particular period of around 2,000 years, right? So we're moving now into what's called the Age of Aquarius. And Aquarius is an air sign. Aquarius is all about community. It's all about the mind. It's all about how we're connected. It's all about building small groups and building for the benefit of each other. So as you can see, we are moving from one way of being into another way of being, right? And in order for that to happen, we have to break down all of the experiences and all of the illusions of the past in order to move into this new future. So what you're seeing right now is a complete dismantleization of our reality, because it is no longer in alignment with where we're trying to go. Everything is always teaching us. So we are here just to learn. So even the experience of being in the systems that we've been in has been teaching us certain things. But we're now in the space where we have to consolidate that learning and use it to awaken us to move into this next stage. In order for us to experience being in this 3D realm, we have had to go through a dissension in consciousness, which has then allowed us to have an amnesia. So it's basically like you're being your source, you're the creator, and you decide to come down here as an individualized aspect to learn certain lessons, certain soul lessons that your soul will benefit from, but also to be part of helping to raise the vibration of this place and to help it shift into its next stage of experience. It's almost as if you've got something vibrating and you put more energy into it, it vibrates faster. We're moving into a higher vibratory space. We're also being encouraged to shift genetically and biologically. We're moving from being carbon-based beings, right? Physical, dense beings, understanding ourselves as density, to now moving into being light beings, understanding that all of our cells and everything in our body is fueled by light. Even this whole 5G, all of this new new wave of spiritual and energetic warfare is also helping you to understand your energetic system. So I see everything as always working in harmony, right? We need to go through these breakdowns of old paradigms. We need to go through these new imposed threats so that we can now start to understand ourselves on these higher energetical levels, right? On these levels of consciousness outside what we are used to operating on. So how I can explain the shift, we can already see that we've shifted, because look at how we're talking now. We're talking to each other through a screen, and we're talking to each other basically astrally. We're connecting with each other's consciousness. Most of the world through this coronavirus has been shifted from 3D to 4 and 5D. Now, 4D is where the fear is. 4D represents the shadow realms. It represents where all of our hidden thoughts, our hidden woes, our hidden, all of the things that's the underbelly of us, it exists within the 4th dimension. And as we're transitioning into the 5th, we are meeting the 4th dimension. So the 4th dimension is where all of our thoughts are, where our thoughts exist. So what you're seeing now is through misuse of information and fear, we're seeing how through this coronavirus pandemic, we're seeing how people are triggered by their thoughts and emotions, and how it has an effect on their whole physiological being and their whole reality. We are understanding how our thoughts alter our reality and our experience. We are seeing how people are literally going through a timeline split, a reality split. You have those who are so consumed by the fear that they don't see anything else. And then you have those who are in the middle, who know that something's not quite right, and they're willing to learn about what else is coming. And there are those who have been doing this work for a long time who are like, okay, this is the signs, we're moving into this new stage, right? And it's those people, the ones who have been doing the work just through sharing, that can raise the vibration of the others. And to raise the vibration means to bring awareness so that you're vibrating at the frequency of this new information. Okay, so what it does is it opens us up to more of who we are. Who we are on a spiritual level and a bioenergetic level. We have been governed by the 5 senses, because the 5 senses are what can operate within our 3D construct and reality. However, we have other senses. We have our intuition. We feel vibes. We can biolocate. We can project our consciousness to other places. These are things that some of us could do before, and some of us were aware we're doing it, but not aware that we were doing it. So, when you walk into a room and you're like, I can feel an off vibe in here. That's one of our senses, but it's not a sense that we had developed and given its importance. Now, as we're transitioning into this new stage, and notice how I said that the past cycle, the age of Pisces, started with BC. Now everything before now is going to be called BC, before Corona. so Corona has kind of been the catalyst for this awakening of this new reality, this new paradigm. And as I said in the beginning, everything is mental, right? The Hermetic laws that were passed down from Tahuti, passed down from ancient Kemet, teach us the principles of understanding not only the universe, but also how our reality works. And the first law is the law of mentalism. Everything is mental. And as I said, we're transitioning through the 4th dimension, which is the mental realm. So if you don't get your mind right, it's going to reflect to you all of the weaknesses, all of the shadows. But ultimately, so that you can get your mind right, so that it can vibrate at a higher frequency. Because vibrating at a higher frequency means bringing in more of your soul consciousness, bringing in more of that God consciousness, that I am that you are. And in order for you to be able to bring all of that energy in, the physical body has to be vibrating at a frequency where it can now hold that energy that is you. Now, a lot of people are becoming very sick, right? Number one, viruses help us to understand the nature of illness, but also the body gets a virus when it's shifting from one stage to another. When it's trying to bring healing, when it's purging out old things, it heats itself up because heat raises the vibration, and through that it purges in order to now create a new environment where this new energy can sit in. So the virus is also helping us to burn out any any old wounds, any lower vibrational energies on all levels that need to be cleansed. It's also encouraging us to upgrade our body. So we're having to learn about how to boost our immune system. Our immune system communicates with our auric field, which communicates with everything, right? So when we learn how to communicate to boost our immune system, we now start to be in control of how our body is vibrating and the wellness of our health. All of our organs vibrate at a certain frequency as well. So we're starting to learn to understand how thoughts, how things like Wi-Fi and 5G can actually have an effect on your body. What you're having to learn is that a frequency of 60 hertz bombarded at your system now makes your blood cells start to overproduce oxygen, and it can poison you. These are all the things that we're having to learn so that we can understand ourselves as light beings. We talk about how we eat our food. We have to get life from our food because we are light beings. So as much as we're going through a crisis, what's happening is that we're getting a crash course into the next stage, how to be light beings. The fear factor. When you look at programs such as, I was watching Monsters Inc. with my children.
Yeah.
and one of the things in Monsters Inc., it tells you about the fact that this government system is based on fear. And that they collect your fear and utilize your fear, because when they have your fear, that you can be controlled and they can be energized. Even when you look at a lot of this stuff that's coming out right now with the deep state and how they're talking about celebrities basically feeding on children's energy of fear, you can look at it as being literal, or you can look at it as them literally feeding off the world's fear. Because if you look at all of these false flag events that we've had, a lot of people are in poverty. If you look at the news, its basic purpose is to spread propaganda and fear, which then creates a hostile environment within people where they feel disempowered, where they feel low in low in health. They don't feel able to focus clearly. So then naturally their bodies start to decrease in health, right? And so then they're more easy to be controlled and also more easy to become in ill health. Another thing that's coming through this whole pandemic is us having to understand the sanctity of life. And we as Black people as well, our story has always been about not really honoring life. If we look at a lot of the prehistory, where it talks about the war of the gods, we were the gods. We were the gods that was warring, and we were the ones that were always seeing separation in each other, man against woman, man against woman. And that has been filtered down to humanity. When you look at what's happening in our communities now, we're realizing that the value of life has been displaced. Even when we look at slavery, that was all down to the fact that we did not honor the sanctity of life, right? Because even when you go to Africa, you speak to people, they don't have any remorse because they know that it was business. It was simply business. But it shows where we were not honoring the sanctity of life. And look where we are right now. Again, not in the space of honoring the sanctity of life and not realizing that our healing is in each other. Black people as well, we are the creators. We are the Most High's first physical manifestation of human, what it means to be human. Everything that's in existence is within us. Everything that has been existed after is within us. So when we are in well health, the world is in well health. We have not been in well health for a very long time. And so we're expecting the world to give us and to support us and nurture us when we are the custodians of this planet. So it's also about us now getting back into our rightful position, finding balance within ourselves, mind, body, and spirit. It's also about our women learning what it means to be empowered, to heal our bodies, to heal our minds. It's also about our communities coming together. And we're having to look out for each other. You know, our life is valuable. Our mind is valuable. The skin we have is valuable. Our cells are valuable to sustain life. But we don't have that same valuable ness about ourselves. We don't have that self-worth for ourselves. We don't have that self-worth for each other. And so we're having to address these things. Africa is going to be the epicenter of this next golden age because everything goes in ups and downs. So the power was moved out externally to the West, and now it's coming back into the heart. So whether you like it or not, that is what's going to happen. We are going to live out the next 2032 years of prosperity with Africa being the epicenter, which means that we as people have to get it together. Right? We have to heal ourselves mentally, emotionally, and physically. And we have to understand that we are the sustenance for the whole planet. The reason why people are being trafficked, the reason why people are being taken into hospital and given COVID and then told that, you know, they've got the COVID is because they need organs, they need cells, they need our energy, right? but it's also because we have neglected ourselves for so long. Most of the reasons why we're being affected is because the underlying conditions in which this COVID hybrid condition, so this COVID is a genetically mutated and genetically engineered virus. Coronavirus is a natural occurring virus. It occurs in dogs, it occurs in humans. It's a natural occurring type of virus. But what they have done is they've combined this virus and genetically modified it with things like malaria. That's why also it's affecting Black people more, because malaria also affects Black people more. However, it also affects vital organs which we have to be aware of: the lungs, the heart, the liver, the kidneys, the pancreas, all areas within Black people that are traditionally compromised. We have a lot of people in our community with respiratory conditions. We have a lot of people in our communities with kidney problems, with liver problems. And these are all connected to suppressed emotional trauma that has not been released. When you are anxietized, your chest becomes tight. When you are not living in alignment with your truth, you develop heart disease. Do you understand what I mean? We don't purge our emotions, so you develop liver and kidney disease. We also self-medicate through drugs and alcohol. So all of these have weakened those particular organs, which at this time need to be raised in vibration so that we can be vibrating at optimal frequency. You'll find that a lot of people are transitioning as well because their bodies cannot maintain the frequency required to live in this next stage of being. The 5G is also showing us that the frequency of the planet is raising. So we have to raise in alignment with that. So some of the people that are transitioning have chosen on a soul level to transition also because their light is best utilized in the spirit, because the flesh can no longer hold the frequency. So we are in a shifting time, and we are in a time of transformation and transition. But this is also what our ancestors went through. Many of us who are here right now have been here before. We've been here through these transitions. If you look at the Aztec culture, they apparently disappeared off of the planet. No, they didn't. They spiritually ascended. They vibrated at a certain frequency and had achieved all of their soul lessons as a collective and community. And so we're now living on a different level of consciousness, which is beyond our physical spectrum of being able to see. Same like our guides, our ancestors, all exist within this same space, but they're outside of our physical spectrum of light. So this ascension has been happening many times before, and a lot of us are receiving information from galactic consciousness. People are talking about aliens and ETs and all of these things, and the best way to align with that energy is just to understand that we are not alone in the universe, and we never have been. But at the same time, if you look in our history, you'll always see that we've had connections with mythological beings. We've always had connections with, fairies and elementals. But if you look at the stories, you'll also see that there was a time when we became so dense in our vibration that they had to come away from us, that we were disconnected from the spiritual realms. That was also the same time in which iron came in, and that was also the time that war came in. So this is where you see that we de-evolved in consciousness, and the vibrational frequency that we were at was one of war and carnage, which is all connected to the root chakra and the reptilian brain. So we've been experiencing ourselves in that realm, and now it's time to ascend. It's time to move beyond that experience. It's time to expand, and we are moving into what's called the heart chakra. I liken it to our chakra systems. So basically your lower three chakras are all connected to you as a person and your personal experience. You have your root chakra, which is all about your survival instincts. You're feeling home in your body and on this planet. Then you've got your sacral chakra, which is all about your creativity, your sexual energy, and where your soul resides. Then you have your solar plexus, which is all about your willpower, your determination, your focus, and your drive. Those three chakras are all connected to you as a person. But when you now start getting into the heart is the bridge. The heart is about how you connect with other people. The heart is about how you express yourself, and the heart is governed by love. But the thing about love that we don't understand is love is not a quality that we can choose to have. It is a force, an impenetrable force, an indestructible force. And love lives for what is right and does what is right. It doesn't think about what the mind thinks about whether I should do this now or I shouldn't do that, or should I say the truth because it's this person or no. It is the truth. And so in order for us to enter into that space, to be able to live a life of resonant truth, where we're able to feel each other's energy, we have to master the lower self, and the lower self is those lower three chakras. It is your fears and your insecurities. It is your sexual energy and your ability to manifest and your creativity. It is your willpower and how you drive yourself and how you activate that God self into this reality. And so the ascension is happening on all levels. It's happening within ourselves. It's happening within our reality. It's happening in the heavens. And it's an opportunity for us to experience more. So everything that we're experiencing right now, it's just like the consolidation of all of the learning and experiences that we've had that are going to allow us the space, the understanding to now move into this next reality and co-create it together, because we don't realize that we're always co-creating our realities. We are subscribing to, the theme of our reality, and it's called census reality. Right. So if 51% of the collective believe in the positive effects of this awakening, that sets the precedence for the whole of humanity. So that's another reason why we're seeing a lot of these false flag attempts at the government and different organizations to keep people in the vibration of fear. Because if you're in the vibration of fear, you cannot ascend. And what you do is you allow yourself to be open now on this fourth dimensional space that we're moving into, where all of the shadows live, where all of the negative spirit lives, where fear lives. And you have to learn to master that in order to get into the heart and get into the light and to step into your power and your truth. And the way that you move through this ascension is through healing your shadow. That fourth dimension is your shadow. And that's why there's a focus on us healing our shadows, because that's what allows us to get into the light. That's what our ancestors didn't get to do. That's why they were using obeah and all of these things, because they didn't know how, they didn't get into the heart yet. They're still mastering the lower self that thinks that something can be taken away from it. That doesn't understand the laws of the universe. When I teach people, especially women, about magic and spirituality and majesty, I don't speak about it from a perspective of doing rituals and hoping that something's going to happen. I don't deal with wishing magic. I help people to understand the magnetic nature of their own energy and how it correlates and corresponds with everything that is. And the magic comes from being able to master that connection, to be able to know that you are part of everything and everything is in you, and to work with those energies. And that's what I bring back to our people, because that is our original spirituality. That is nature, which I call nature. It is nature. We are nature, and nature is part of us. And so by us learning these indigenous cultures, and you've seen this a reawakening taking place, we're rearming ourselves with the tools that allow us to be the masters and the gods in this reality, not just for ourselves, but for each other. So this awakening is a positive thing. This shift that we're going through right now is a positive thing. This current stage that we're in, which is called the transition period, is like a metamorphosis stage, right? And it will end in 2032. You'll see that since 2000 and let's say 2003, we've had loads of different processions of the equinoxes. We've had, supermoons and all different kinds of astrological events that have all been helping to raise the vibration of this planet, because it is happening as above, so below. But there will come a point where it will stop. And you will start to just create a mean, like a resonant vibration on the planet. And 2032 is the cutoff for that. So you'll see that up until this point, people will be moving around the planet. People will be, building amongst small communities. Things will be changing. The old way of leadership and governance will change. Everything's going to change. And we're in that period of transformation right now. And so everything that we're going through right now is preparing us for that. And as I speak to you, my eyes is just being drawn to a DVD cover, which is of 2012, the 2012 movie. And I don't know if you remember, but at the end of that movie, after all of the destruction, when they were looking for the new world was in Africa. That's why Wakanda and all of these things, because that is the heart of this planet. And before the planet became separated, everything existed from this one landmass. And so we are starting to understand our connection to each other. And same like how we have the internet is indicative of the web that we are, the Christ consciousness grid that we are, where we're able to communicate with each other through our thoughts, through our emotions. We're able to send energy, send healing. That is the real matrix that we have to be bringing our attention to, even though the internet and the powers that be are trying to usurp that in a way by creating a matrix that we have to now get involved in. Understand that it's because that's what's really happening on a conscious level. We are all learning to tap into that spiritual knowledge and power that informs us as multidimensional beings having a human experience.
Couldn't have said it better. I love
say.
it. You know, it's just like, yeah. And that's why I knew that I needed to speak to you. I'm like, if anyone's going to lay it out properly, I know it's going to be you.
I say.
Because there's been so, you know, there is so much fear, and it's hard to explain to people why you don't need to fear at the moment when they have evidence. And it's like, it's wherever you're looking, really.
Exactly.
That's going to give you your evidence as well. But, you know, I just don't feel it. I don't feel it. So people are like, yeah, but what about this? And what's, and you know, what's going to happen? And we all going to be cyborgs? I'm like, I don't really think that's
cyborgs. I love that.
Do you know, I'm just like, I honestly don't feel it. I really just think we're going to be okay. Or maybe like, I'm going to be, you know, the people who decide they're going to be okay are going to be okay. And I realise also there's a lot of truth that is being uncovered, you know, like you're saying with the web, and the web has given us an opportunity to actually uncover what has been going on, not just within ourselves, but you know, in terms of the cloud that we've been living on and what's been going on, and like the false gods that have been put against, you know, in front of us, and where we've actually taken the power away from ourselves, put other people on pedestals and given them all of the praise and all of the glory, and then suddenly you're like, hang on a minute, oh, okay, so they were kind of they were kind of under some sort of like, in order for them to kind of be the god, they had to play the game.
Exactly.
And in this, especially in this point of transition where not all of the truths are, not everyone has actually gone down the line of actually looking at what the truths are and unveiling what the stories have been, and where they've given away their power to these people that they've placed above themselves. You know, there's going to be, you know, I'm looking at things and like, people are going to have to deal with some deep deception, you know, and I don't know how that's going to go, you know, when you're looking at it going, man, when you find out about this, it's like, I don't know how that's going to go for you. It's just, you know, because I don't know, you know, because especially when you're on social media and you see people like who their allegiance is with, and they're still like, rah, and you're just like, man, I don't know, you know. I don't know how that's going to go for you, because then you're going to have to look at that and see that truth, and then like you're saying, like people are going to have to do the shadow work if they choose to do so.
Exactly.
And then the ones that are transitioning, then, you know, they transition and we go onto a different plane. I wanted to ask you also about, in terms of when we get online, really get online with our abilities, and a lot of us already know, you know, what we can do, and like, especially with, you know, we have the internet and things like that, but I'm finding more things are just popping in anyway. It's like, I'll do something, oh, you just sent me a message, you know. It's like clicking off quicker than ever before. I think because we haven't got like to keep going into the density of things, and you just having time to be connected all the time. But it's dealing with, what do you see for us? I know you talked about levitation and talked about other sensory abilities as well. What else do you know? I've heard some things about technologies. I'm like, really? Oh, that's so good. You know?
I mean, there is a whole load. It's so funny because if you look at Demolition Man, the movie, I don't watch a lot of movies, but when I do watch movies, they're very poignant. And in Demolition Man, it showed you basically this life that we're living in right now, where we're not talking to we're not touching each other, we're dealing with each other from a distance. You know, where we're able to download information to our minds by doing online courses and all these things. And so there's more to come. I mean, part of what's gonna happen, or what is part of our journey, is this fusing of technology and humanity. You're seeing a bit of it with, you know, the imposition of the chip, and you're seeing it a lot more with people who are having pacemakers and things like this fitted. You can see that more and more there is this merging of human and robots, and that is going to be part of the theme, because with everything there is polarity, right? So really that's showing you that you are the divine technology. But when you choose to be ignorant to that, and you want to give more power to something outside of yourself, then you create a monster outside of yourself. So as I said to you, it's always a reflection. for us, the journey starts with getting deeper connected with who we are. So that's why we have to do the shadow work and all of these things, because it starts to lighten our vibration and our sensitivity. We see a lot more people who are empaths these days, who are very sensitive. And so just because of their nature, they're having to learn more about what that means and how they communicate. And so then that means that they're able to share that with other people. We're having to be more sensitive to their sensitivities. There are people that are interested in things like Reiki, interested in healing, interested in crystals and all these things. So just the interest alone sets you on the path of reawakening that within your consciousness, because you're not going to be triggered by anything that's not for you. Right? So first you've got the early stages where people are going to be awakening by just trying things, by just following their natural guidance and intuition, learning how to be more aware of their feelings, learning how to trust their mind as we start to personally develop ourselves, because that's where it starts. I recorded a guided meditation this morning, and just simple thing like I was asking the source to help me to trust what I see, because we're encouraged to not trust what we see. Remember, I told you there's themes with each age, right? So the age of Pisces was that I believe it when I see it. So unless someone can validate it, it's not real, right? Whereas now we're in a different age. I know. It's in the age of knowing. If you don't know, then you don't know, innit? And what I know is my reality. So as you can see already, the mindset will shift. So once we shift our mindset, we now give more focus to the power of what's going on in here. And now this becomes a portal towards experiencing a multidimensional reality. Everything starts in here. That's why I say everything is mental is one of the most important of the spiritual laws. As we seek to try and free ourselves from a lot of the things that are suppressing us now, that will naturally move us into exploring more of our spiritual gifts, and also helping us to become more sensitive to each other. The more we start planting and gardening and just wanting to cultivate more peace within ourselves, we will start to deepen our connection with spirit. So for me, it's a natural growth and evolution that's going to take place, which will just allow us to be more connected to everything that we're experiencing, more able to tune into things. Levitation and all of these things come from the mind. Everything is the power of the mind, even down to, all forms of spirituality, all forms of creation is down to the mind. So because people's minds are so sick and warped, that's where all of the work will happen. And then that will naturally create this awakening of all of our other senses. We will get to the point where we're able to biolocate. To biolocate means to be able to use the theory of quantum physics to be able to destable and construct your energies from light to light. Literally. I mean, when you really think about it in a scientific way, it makes sense. But we have to get to the point where we can actually see our body beyond being physical. So the more that we work on the mind, the more that we go into meditation, the more that we start cultivating that experience within, the more we awaken those higher senses, and the more that we start to live in a reality which is based on our ability to perceive through those senses. So in a way, the sky is the limit, and there is really no limit to what we can do and what we will experience. We'll be able to touch each other and have instant healing, instant manifestation, speaking things into form. But in order to wield that power, we have to do the clearing that's needed so that we can lighten our frequency, and so that we are working in alignment with the law of the universe, because we're still working very much from a personal perspective, the I perspective, not the I am. And so we have to master that. But yeah, I just see us growing in terms of how we communicate with each other and how we experience our reality, and moving from the space of having other people validate our experiences to us validating our experiences. And I think that will also shed a lot of light on the potential of what it is that we can do as humans in the flesh. Because I look at it like each one of us is a radiant aspect of the source, right? And the source wants to express itself through each one of us uniquely. So how I tune into spirit and how you tune into spirit is going to be different. But when we can all bring each other a different aspect of that one energy through sharing that. And what I experience will be different, and will be different to how you experience yours, but ultimately will be the same information, the same journey, the same knowledge. So that's how I believe that it will go. I'm excited, but one thing I do feel like is important is, in order for us to vibrate on that frequency where we actually know each other's thoughts, we know each other's feelings, we have to get into a space where we're not holding people hostage in our minds. We have to get to a place where we can be mindful of our thoughts, that, you know, inside of here isn't so toxic and destructive to other people that we don't actually want to connect with them on that level. And that's what's happening right now. You know, that's why discernment is so needed. Everybody's open, everybody wants to learn, but they're also having experiences, negative experiences with people on the spiritual journey, emotional, physical. It's for a reason, because one of the things that we have to implore, which we haven't learned before, is discernment. And discernment requires you being willing to even trust in your own ability to judge whether something is right for you or not, and to be willing to stand behind that. And really, more time we're always compromising what we think is right or wrong to be PC or to be allowing, or, you know, but no, sovereignty is the time that we're moving into. And to be sovereign means to stand in your own power, to speak your own truth. To be sovereign means to be governed by your own laws, but also to respect the laws of others. And where we're being called to step into sovereignty, both on a personal level, because that's why we're going through all of these things where, you know, they could have mandatory vaccine and all these things. It's about asking you, where does your power lie, and who controls your reality, and how do you reclaim that power back? Where have you given away your power without knowing? You know, and that's what that is on a personal level. Collective sovereignty is about us as humans being able to have the freedom to live out our true experience, you know, and experience who it is that we are. And so it means that we're going to have to learn to take responsibility for who we are in order to be able to action and activate that sovereignty. So I just see a lot of expansion and a lot of opportunities for us to get deeper connected and to just experience what it feels like to be here, but in a different way, you know, like bigger. And I'm looking forward to that.
Me too. I'm with you. And I think, you know, like you're saying, it is, especially on a 3D, is like, yeah, when I see it, I believe it. That kind of like backwards thinking where you're like, no, if you believe it, then it's gonna. But I think for the people that are still deeply entrenched in the story that's being sold to them, the only way that sometimes the only way you can force someone to stand up for themselves is to actually pull yourself away from them. So they're going to have to develop, something is going to have to happen in order for them to develop a deep mistrust in where they put their faith.
Exactly.
Because like people, you know, so some of us have gone like, this is bullshit. And what I'm finding is, the more that I kind of keep myself in that 5D space, like anytime I do look at any of the mainstream stuff, it's like a joke. You can like see between the lines. It's like, come on now, like look. It's like, it's literally, why can't anyone see that the play? It's a play. It's the biggest story ever told. But if you're in it and you're not looking, and if you're not looking any wider than that one story, then that's going to look like all that it is.
Exactly.
So until people can really see that the emperor's got no clothes, that Santa doesn't exist, that you know that like Superman's not going to come and save them, and then they're like, okay, that's when it will turn around and they start waking up to themselves, if that's what they choose, if that's what they came here to do. You know, maybe they came here to just experience that 3D and then, you know, come back and do another thing. Who knows?
Exactly. We're all part of the shift in our own different way. You know, some of us have come to be here for the long haul. Some of us have come to show other people what not to do. So we all have to just acknowledge our own part in the journey. And what I've realized as well is everything is frequency. Everything is frequency. Like you tune in on the old TVs that they used to have, where you used to have to turn the knob and then you get the channel, but anything outside of there is white noise. That's what we have to understand, that people are going to be tuning into whatever it is that they choose to tune into, and they won't hear anything else. Everything else will be white noise. We can only lead by example. We can only keep sharing our light. Even when this pandemic first started, I was spending like all of my days just sending all of this loving energy out, doing videos. And I mean, I just felt full of joy and full of light. But then, like, by the third week, I was plagued by all of this negative energy. And I didn't realize it was all of the thoughts and fears of other people. Because especially when you put your light out there and say to everyone, look, just stay focused, you get people who are negative towards you. You got people who can't see that reality. You got people who just want to shut you down. And so you then become bogged by all of that. When you're trying to explain to somebody and they're trying to argue with you about it, you end up lowering your vibration as well. You end up questioning what you believe. So same thing, you have to know that it's part of the journey. One of the things that I've learned through my wisdom is that you get to a certain point where you realize that you choose your battles wisely. People don't need saving, and sometimes you can waste your time and end up killing yourself trying to save the next person, whereas at the end of the day there is only you. There is only you. Even though you can see other people, there is only you. So you can only help somebody once you've helped yourself, and sometimes people don't want to be helped. You have to just acknowledge and accept that. I'm learning to acknowledge and accept that, because I realize that it's more important for me to maintain my frequency, because energy can only be raised and changed from something that's from a higher vibrational frequency. So if I lower my vibration, I can't help anybody. If I keep my vibration high and keep it raised, then I can help everybody else to vibrate upwards. And so we just have to be in our own space and doing what we need to do, but also acknowledging that there's going to be days where we're going to feel like crap. Like that was happening to me last week. And I have this part of me that always wants to be happy and always wants to be on it. But you learn so much when you allow yourself to be in your shadow. You learn so much, because I learned about all of the different ways in which I give away my power. And one of them is not being balanced, is giving too much and not receiving, and even giving myself time to replenish. So we also have to just be willing to take each moment for what it is and appreciate the presentness of each moment. When I asked God, what should I be focusing on? What should I be doing right now? God said to me, look, you're always asking that. You're always asking. Why don't you just be just be okay with being, just be okay with feeling, just be okay with being in this moment. And so that sometimes is the remedy to get past. Even sometimes we want to show people, because what I see a lot right now is a lot of information being spread, and sometimes it can be an overload. We're in the age of information, right? The age of Aquarius. If you look at the zodiac symbol for the age of Aquarius, it's a water bearer pouring over a water cup. Which means that all of this water represents the knowledge. If there's no way of stemming that flow, you're going to drown. You don't have any way of deciphering what's the right knowledge for you, what's the wrong knowledge for you. You're not giving yourself a time to drink it so that you can be nourished. That's exactly what's happening right now. So that age of information can kill you as well, if you're not willing to discern, and if you're not willing to still ingest the information and think about, okay, is this right for me? Is this not right for me? Does this resonate? Is it true for me? And then be willing to put it out.
And I think that's the part that people are learning what to do. It's an opportunity now for people to get into critical thinking as well. Because before, we don't get taught critical thinking. Like you were saying before, when you were talking about being a child and staying in with that connection in spirit, I've seen so many children born around me that I've seen the light just go out of them as they've gone through the system. So this is an opportunity for us where people are like, oh my God, I'm being bombarded. There's so much information. I'm like, we should be grateful there's so much information, because you take it all in and then you see what seems right for you. And then you create like you say, you can choose a reality based on all the bits of information that you have. It's like, you can go down the dark. You want to go down that rabbit hole and that be your reality, then there it is. Or you can sit in the center and just be aware of all of the things. Or you can just turn on the television and that can be your story. I think it's an opportunity the most creative opportunity that we have is just opening the message out for people to go, listen, the opportunity is greater than we've ever known it, because things is so clear. It's clearer than I've ever seen it in my entire life. The truth. Ashe.
And when you can see it like that, it helps. It helps to keep you on the right path, and it helps you to allow you to be balanced, because really that's all that's required for you right now. We're not here to know everything, because we are living it. But when you can keep balance, when you can be in a space where you can be present, it just helps, because the worst thing is panic and fear. That for me is just, it's not a vibration that I like to reside in, because it makes me feel uncomfortable. So if I can't control something, I will sit and just wait for my spirit to show me what it is that I need to know. And we as people need to start being more like that. We need to start functioning more like that and trusting the inner guidance that we get. And I believe that we will see that, especially in our community as well, because the spirituality is required for us to do the healing that we need to step into this next stage. And even just moving through that path of spirituality, we still have to meet our shadow, because our spirituality doesn't have one face, but it has one essence. And the ancestral mothers connect us back to that essence, that true essence. So yeah, that's what I see coming for us next as well, a rebirth and a reawakening into our spirituality, because it's important to life. The reason why people experience so much rubbish is because they don't know who they are, and because they don't know that they are a spirit having a human experience, and they don't know how to navigate these experiences. So yeah. Give thanks for the awakening, hey?
I know, amazing. Well, we've been waiting for this thousands of years. So
girl, yes, we have. It's time.
Yeah. So let me ask you these Her Conversations questions anyway.
Yeah.
So the first one is, what is the best piece of advice a woman has ever given to you?
It's to speak my truth and to know that I have something valuable to share. Yeah, well, as I spoke to you about before, when I was shut down quite a lot as a child, and I didn't feel like my voice was worthy to be heard. And I still work on that quite a lot. You wouldn't think so, but I have issues sometimes, anxiety issues when it comes to going live and things like that, because I've always been seen as the outcast or the weird one who speaks all of this great stuff and everybody loves it and everyone likes to be around her energy, but she's just weird. Do you know what I mean? So I'm actually getting to love myself a lot more and be comfortable with the me that I am. But that piece of guidance to basically just always speak my truth and know that I'm worthy to be heard was very, very powerful for me.
Beautiful. And I actually collect the weird ones. They're the people that I like.
Hello.
The weird one, as a fellow weird one, like,
yes, girl.
Weird ones are my favorite because I understand.
Yeah, I mean, I learned that we have a specific purpose. The black sheep are the light workers. They are the healers. You can't be a healer without going through some shit. You cannot be a healer without going through trauma and transforming that energy. So you have to know what it feels like to be an outcast. You have to know what it feels like to be trapped in your own reality, because now we're the ones, especially in this new age time, that can help other people through their own Maya and illusion. So I think, yeah, we're in a good club right now.
Yeah, so everyone, they'll want to be in our club soon. You'll see. Oh, so which woman would you say represents higher energetic resonance to you?
Well, for me, it's really funny because for a while I couldn't see myself in anyone. I found it difficult to try and find a woman out there who I respected, because I would give over so much love and appreciation to people, and then I'd feel it not being reciprocated, and so that would make me feel like, as much as I loved other women and I appreciated them, that there was something that they didn't appreciate about me. But recently there's been a woman that's come on my journey, and her name is Dr. Arikana. She is the former ambassador of the African Union, and the reason why I really admire her is that for once I can see myself, I can see the future of who I am and who I want to be. She is a strong black feminine matriarch. She is a woman that understands that leadership is our birthright. It's our natural talent as women, because we can see what needs to be done. We can see what needs to be provided. And we're not about having to be the boss. We don't have to be the person who is the leader. We lead from wherever we are, but we can see what needs to be done, and that we're willing to do what needs to be done. She represents an element of the divine feminine matriarch that's missing in this world. And I feel like us as black women, we carry parts of her, but it's been corrupted because we've been through our traumatic experiences. And so even our most powerful voice can be quite damning and damaging. Whereas with this woman, I feel like she encapsulates that balance, and she can speak from a place of authority, but from a place of nurturing all at the same time, and calling us to be accountable for what is right. And she just speaks with that authority of, this is what needs to happen, and this is what needs to happen, not just for me, but our whole collective. You know, she speaks from that place of a mother. And last year when I was working with the ancestral mothers, they showed me that the reason why it's important for us as black women to start coming together is because that energy of the matriarch has been missing from the planet for a long time. We're still little girls trying to be seen. We haven't even embraced our motherhood, our womanhood, let alone our matriarchness as beings. I'm not talking about as individuals. I'm talking about as beings in terms of knowing who we are. And so for me, she represents that. And I've always had a passion for politics when I was younger. And I always knew that going into my older stages in life, I was going to go into politics. My grandmother as well, on my dad's side, she was also in politics. She was a politician in Grenada for the PNP, the People's National Party. And she transitioned maybe 3 years ago now. And so when she transitioned, I also knew that I was going to get into politics. And both of these women represent strong women who are not afraid to speak up for others, who are not afraid to speak their truth. And I know as a child, that was who I am. Oh, I like the way I said that. That was who I am. Not who I was, but that is who I am. And so seeing her ignites that within me. So Dr. Arakana, from the former ambassador of the African Union, is someone that I really respect.
Beautiful. And what's your favorite self-care ritual or practice?
I love a spiritual bath because water is so important for me. When I really started to get deeper into my spiritual knowledge, when I was training, because I've trained in Jamaica, I've trained in Uganda, I've trained in Egypt, I've trained in Ghana, immersed ourselves in our spiritual traditions and cultures, and connected with my spiritual teams and things like that. So learning how to do spiritual baths was paramount for me. I find that I always pick up spirit attachments. My light has always been so bright. Like even when I used to go to spiritual groups and go training, I would always be the one that all of the spirit attachments would jump on, and they would, jump into my auric field. And so I always found myself vulnerable to spirits. But with water, with learning how to do the spiritual baths, before I get into a spiritual bath, I say, He leadeth me beside the still waters, He restoreth my soul. And that's what it is for me. It's literally like going back into the womb, going into the primordials, because that's where my soul is. Whenever I close my eyes, whenever I take people into meditation, I take them into the primordials. I take them into the womb. And so for me, going back into the womb is like a complete reset. It just allows me to release all that needs to be released. It allows me to be nurtured. I love the whole thing of, getting herbs, choosing herbs, awakening the herbs, boiling the herbs, talking to the herbs. I like calling on the different elements, the fire, the air, the earth, the water, and just understanding how everything is coming together in this moment to help me bring balance to myself, and for somebody that spends a lot of time doing that for others, that's my safe space, my sanctuary. So definitely spiritual baths and ritual. Ritual is a big part of my life. Everything is a ritual. And I'm learning more and more that I have to just honor and trust my ritual practice and not really care what other people think, because sometimes you can feel judged by people. I have walked into spiritual schools of thought that people have a negative connotation about. And so they may judge me or whatever. But I've learned that I have to do what's right for me, because when I don't, my life becomes chaotic. Like, one thing I will say is our ancestral calling is not something that we choose. It chooses us. We are our ancestors' inheritance, and our ancestors inherit us, right? So when you don't follow your path, things go wrong in your life because your ancestors are reminding you of what it is that you came here to do. And so I know that I came to transform a lot of the stigma around our spiritual practices, because we need it in this time. And so I've had to learn that people are going to have their own connotations. They're going to have their own negative perceptions. But when I stay true to my journey, I can gift them from that experience, from that place. And that's all I can do. I can only reintroduce it to you from where I met it. And because my connection with the Creator was there before I engaged in any of these things, that for me is the most important aspect. So ritual, sacred practice, these are all ways of me getting that space where I can connect with the higher part of me, the source, the part of me that knows all of this, knows all things. And so that's where I find my comfort. Because when you're a helper, when you're somebody that's always used to helping people, people can find it very difficult when you're in a space of not being comfortable, or when you're having a down day. And I've experienced that quite a lot. People sometimes they don't know how to process me not being, in my greatness, so to speak. So I utilize ritual and my sacred baths as a way of being able to seek counsel with God and with myself. So yeah, that's my self-care.
Good for you. So what's coming up for you now? Do you like new courses? When are you gonna release that book? What's going on?
Okay, so yeah, there's a lot going on, and I'm trying to balance it all. So what I've been called to do, the main area of my work, is working with women from our community. And I've developed a program called Awakening Her, and a book that goes with it. And it is about awakening that inner feminine power within ourselves. It's about taking a journey of self-exploration. And it's about, repairing and restructuring the fragmented parts of ourselves. So just supporting women through a journey of awakening, you know, through the different archetypes of what it is to be a woman, and also through our cultural archetypes. So people like Oshun and Yemaya and Oya, these are all archetypes. They're all expressions of the nature within ourselves. And so I'm focusing on helping women from our community to start taking that journey towards activating and aligning with the divine feminine inside of them. Also, I am being guided to create space to train more people, because I find that with my work, I can become overrun with people, and that then affects my ability to work from integrity and help as many people as I want to help. And everything is about growth, right? So I want to train more people, and it doesn't just have to be men. I mean, it doesn't just have to be women, but I want to train more people in the nature of healing and the nature of holistic health and well-being, because as you can see, we've learned from this pandemic that health is the most vital thing that we need. And we've also realized that people are going to need help to learn how to think properly, how to think for themselves, and how to bring healing to their trauma and their pain. I also believe that in our community, especially, the women need to be empowered so that they can raise their children and nurture and support their husbands in the right way. We see a lot of dysfunction in our relationships. We see a lot of women who are out of balance with their masculine and feminine energies, which are causing illnesses in their bodies, and males who are also going through the same. So I really feel like my focus is on helping to create more healers so that people can be empowered to do this job for each other, and that we can actually bring change. The Journey Through the Gateways book, I'm going to be releasing that next year, just because I feel like my focus right now has to be on doing work that is relative to where we are right now. But I'm also doing online courses. So because I'm an accredited trainer, I train in everything from all types of massage, crystal healing, and all of my courses are accredited as well. So it's a professional qualification that you can get that is regulated by the Institutional Institute of Complementary Therapies, which means that it can be used anywhere in the world. So if you did a course with me today, you'd be able to get insured a membership and go and work in Jamaica as a wellness coach from your computer. So I'm also giving people lifelong skills. My very near future visions are to build the UK's first holistic health and wellness facility that's dedicated to holistic health and wellness. Not only the implementation and sharing of knowledge, but also research into advanced healing technology. I really believe in the integration of indigenous healing practice, natural healing practices. I believe in traditional medicine and the developments that it has made, but I also believe in the way that medicine is going. And medicine is going in a way where we start to understand the healing power of light and sound and frequency and mind and thought and emotions. And I believe that I want to be the forerunner of that, and at least start building a space where we could start researching it. And then also in Africa, building these healing villages. I went to Africa last year for a tour. I went to Ghana, Uganda, Egypt, Ethiopia, and I started to reconnect with people that I'd already connected with when I went over there a few years ago. So I've secured land in Ghana, where I'm going to be starting to build this healing village. So my intention whilst I'm over here is to start building a collective of like-minded people so that we can start generating and pooling together resources. My intention is to create a space where people can come and learn how to heal, learn how to live on the planet, learn how to live in harmony with nature. We'll be a prosperous nation, so we learn about health and wealth and sustainability and soul currency, which is basically the ability to manifest any amount of wealth from using your natural talents and gifts. And also anyone who's involved will have the opportunity to buy their own plots of land where we are, and we build a community, a sustainable community where we are able to live in alignment with our own sovereignty, and also be a part of helping to bring change in not just our own communities, but in the global community. And also just working with children, I really feel like it's important that we create spaces for children, especially Black children, to understand who they are, to harness some of their gifts. They have an amazing, innovative talent, which isn't harnessed because the parents aren't even harnessing their own talents. So I really feel like it's important that we don't forget the children in this time. So, and I'm also just signed the contract with Mind. So I'm working with Mind as their holistic health and wellbeing consultant London-wide. So I advise them about different things that they can do, and we're implementing some strategies around young women and domestic violence, also things around destigmatizing mental health in the Black community, And also I want to train more of people that I know to take up some of those roles, you know, because I believe that we are the best ones to help each other to heal. And we need to start working together to build organizations that allow us to do that, that are for us, by us. And so I just want to share more of my knowledge, share more of my skills, and build a team of people that can go out into the world and do this work, because it's time. And as I said, we've still got a transitionary period to go. So there is still time for us to support humanity through this transition and plant these golden seeds that are going to help to create this next cycle of prosperity and peace and abundance for all of humanity. So not too much, but
listen, we all need to start talking, like speaking on what we want to do, you know. I think there's so many people that once you like give them the opportunity to say what is it that you want to do, what is it that's in your mind, they've got it thought out. It's there, you know. They're like, they can speak for a long time about it. It's very few people that I meet that are like, or maybe I just don't, those are not people that I speak to. But it's very few time when I'd be like, you know, if money was no object, what would you do? That would be like, oh, I don't know, because you know that they wouldn't really be. It's like usually they've got a plan, you know, and they've got things to do and they're just trying to figure out how to get it started. But yeah, it's going forward. It's going to be great just to see all of these budding ideas, you know, open up, and especially with like people healing and that community level, and yeah, all for that. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so where can people find you online? Can you give us all of your website, social media?
Okie dokie. So you can find me on my social medias. I'm very active on Facebook. You can find me at Amenti Anita Francis. That's my main page, or Amenti The Awakener on Facebook. On Instagram, I'm very active on Instagram, Amenti The Awakener. I have a YouTube channel as well, which I do upload a lot of videos, meditations, some of my opinions. I'm going to be doing a lot more on there as well, because I realize that people do want to hear what it is that I've got to say. So you can go to my YouTube, which is Amenti The Awakener. You can also find out about my healing at Amenti, Amenti, healing.webs.com, and also amentitheawakener.co.uk for my website. And I'm always available. You can buy my book. My first book is already out. The first book that I wrote is called 12 Seeds to Awaken Your Spirit, and it is a self-development and spiritual healing workbook, over 490 pages long, which takes you through 12 seeds, which are the 12 lessons, the 12 life aspects that we go through, and gives you an understanding of how you can start to navigate your way through them. And also share my own personal development and give like journal prompts and things at the end of each chapter. And it includes topics such as how to turn your pain into your power, how to learn to cope with change, how to understand love and what love really is, which talks a bit more about your love styles, your love languages, and the power of love, the healing power of love. It talks about spirituality as well and how to cultivate spiritual practice. And there's also an online course that goes with that as well, which is available on Teachable. That is the 12 Seeds to Awaken Your Spirit online course. So yeah, that is me.
And so it should be.
Ashe.
Let's not apologize for that. It's been so amazing to speak to you. Honestly, there's so many other questions that I could ask you, but this would be like a 5-hour one.
I can imagine.
Here we go. But like for you know, for the time being, I just want to say thank you. And like I said, I knew that I just needed to speak to you right now in this moment and put it out like ASAP, because like we're just in the middle of this kind of a new thing, but it's like the beginning of a new thing. And I think I don't know, I just think people need to hear more people speaking about the excitement and the possibility of what is to come, because that's the way that I feel about it. It's not you know, I don't know, I just think it's like, oh my god, it's actually happening. I didn't know it would look like this, but here it is.
Definitely, none of us knew what it would look like, but we are definitely thankful that it is happening. And I do want more people to understand what is happening. And so I really appreciate you creating this platform to allow people to share their stories and us women to share our stories as well. And just want to celebrate the work that you are doing, because you're living your purpose, you're living your passion, and part of that is helping to connect people and helping people's voices to be heard. So I appreciate you, and even just hearing the little bits that you shared about your story as I've been sharing about mine just helps me to really cherish how similar and how kindred we are, in terms of as spirits, and how we all come into each other's cipher for a reason. So I'm thankful, and I look forward to actually getting to know you a bit better. That would be nice.
Anytime I'm available to speak and connect. It's been great.
I say, and I forgot to mention as well, I do run what's called online goddess gatherings, which is a sacred space for women. And we come together, we do yoni steaming, we do ecstatic dance, which is where we just dance to African rhythms, and it's just all about us coming together and connecting and holding space for each other. So I'd definitely love to see you in the next one. I'll send you those details. But if anybody wants to know more about that, you can email me on Amenti The Awakener, AMENTI THEAWAKENER or Amenti The Awakener official. Sorry, but Amenti The Awakener official @gmail.com. And you can also join me live every Tuesday on Omega FM Radio, where I host a show called The Spiritual Awakening Show, which is on 104.1 FM on the FM dial, and also on Omega FM Radio, omegafmradio.co.uk. So I'm about.
Not slowing down, not wasting time, not hiding. No. Good for you.
I appreciate you, sis.
Thank you so much for joining me and Menti on this episode of Her Conversations, and thank you too for listening. You can find out more about me on my website, which is carolmaywhittick.com, carolmaywhittick.com. You can also see me on Facebook under Carol May Whittick, and Twitter, and on Instagram I am @Casmic, that's CAZMICK. So wishing you the best for the following week, and look forward to catching up with you with the next episode. Take care.